Hi, welcome back. Australia, your case study for an extreme weather hazard that is not UK based. So your non-UK weather hazard is the Big Dry in Australia. Now the Big Dry was between 2002 and 2009. Australia had experienced its driest period for 125 years. So this is the Big Dry. Now, what were the causes? Well, Australia is prone to drought anyway because of its geographical location on the globe. It's located in a high pressure area, in a subtropical area where the Hadley cell is descending. So it's high pressure anyway, which we know high is dry. Okay. The other thing is that you had El Nino in action. Now, El Nino is a reversal of the trade winds. So where the trade winds reverse, the water near to Australia actually gets colder. So that leads to air descending, causing even more high pressure. Rainfall diminished then, and Eastern Australia heats up and gets drier, and it's Eastern Australia where people are living. So that's why drought is not just no water. Okay, there's no water in the Sahara, the centre of the Sahara Desert, but that's not drought. Drought is less than expected levels of precipitation that affect humans and environments. That's why it's hazardous. This is global hazards. This is a weather hazard. Okay, it's drought, less than expected rainfall. It was actually 40 to 60% less, depending on where you were in Eastern Australia, than expected. Another cause, again, not so much causing a problem with the rainfall, doesn't stop rain happening, but it does put pressure on the amount of water resources and causes water stress, is that 23 million people live in Australia, a land area to the USA. But that might not seem like a high number, but they're often all over in the eastern area. Okay, so you've got high population density, and in relation to access to water, the country's overpopulated. And the Eastern Australia is home to the Murray-Darling River Basin. The Murray-Darling River Basin is served by the Murray River, the longest river in Australia. But 2 million people live in that river basin, and it's under a lot of pressure to support the agricultural industry. Remember, agriculture, farming, uses water from irrigation. Irrigation is the mass watering of farmland. So it uses a lot of water to irrigate. 40% of Australia's agricultural produce comes from this area, and 70% of the land there is irrigated cropland and pasture. So those were the causes. So one is global geographical location, it's global location in an area of high pressure, a subtropical area. Two, the El Nino, which you should know about, the reversal of the trade winds, which led to the ocean to cool near Australia and rainfall to diminish. And the pressure, the water stress put by overpopulation in Australia. So what were the consequences? Well, again, as geographers, we always split them between social, economic and environmental. Social, people in rural areas left and moved to cities due to lack of water. Rural suicide rates soared because farmers were under a lot of pressure at this time to support their families, and so suicide rates soared. Economically, farmers had to sell the cattle because they couldn't afford to feed them. Water bills rose 20%. Food prices rose because Australia had to import food rather than grow it themselves. 10,000 people who worked in the cotton growing industry were directly affected. Dairy farms reduced by half. All of this is costly. And although Australia is an AC country, it's still an economic impact. Agricultural production was severely affected. And the environmental impacts, I mean, you've all heard in the news about the wildfires. There was lots of bushfires, okay? Loss of vegetation means that it's dried out vegetation, bushfires are more likely. This affects the biodiversity of the area, and animals can be harmed. I mean, the poor koalas. You'll get soil erosion. As the soil dries out, it becomes looser, easier for the wind to blow it away, leads to desertification. Grassland was turned into scrubland. Energy from hydroelectric power was reduced. Hydroelectric power is energy created by the flow of water in a river. You don't have as much water in a river, you're producing less hydroelectric power, which means you have to then rely on fossil fuels, which are more polluting than hydroelectric power, thus leading to increased greenhouse gases in the atmosphere and causing the enhanced greenhouse effect, causing climate change, making El Nino events more likely to happen, leading to Australia being drier. It's as if there's a link, a synoptic link in geography. Sorry that I keep looking over here and you're there. Someone told me it had to be landscape. And water quality is reduced. Toxic algae will outbreak in waters that are stagnant or low. Okay, so how did they respond? Remember, you're either going to be asked about the causes, the impacts, or the response. Let's do the response. You have the local and individual responses, people recycling water from showers, people limiting the amount of time in a shower. Farmers were claiming financial assistance of $400 to $600 per fortnight. Local governments were subsidising rainwater collection tanks. Car washing was banned. 4-minute showers. If you ever studied South Africa, they actually had a record that each song was 4 minutes long, so you could shower to it. The national government, so the sort of longer term responses, multi-million-dollar desalinisation plant built in Sydney. Desalinisation plants take salt out of salt water, so you use ocean water, take the salt out, and it's fresh water. All that's expensive, and it uses a lot of energy. And they were paying out $1.7 million a day to farmers. And the scientists and environmentalists were like, well, we need to get better irrigation systems. So instead of a spray irrigation, we'll drip feed irrigation. That will reduce evaporation. I shouldn't have said evapotranspiration. And they were calculating how much water could be used in each state. That the states had to make sure they didn't go over that figure, but if they saved even more, they could sell their water rates to another state, so the states could make money. That's it. And that was less than 8 minutes and 30. That was 8 minutes. Okay, hope that was okay. Please be nice in the comments, and apparently you should subscribe.